Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Wow. I had one of the worst days that I've had in a very long time, and just saying those few words was like a release off of my chest. So, thanks guys for being here for me. Tonight, I have quite a few really interesting encounters. It seemed like you guys liked last night's upload. When I mixed it up, we touched bases on a little bit of Dogman, Sasquatch, reptilian, paranormal. That's what I'm going to do tonight. And I hope you guys like it just as much as you enjoyed last night's. And if you didn't, well, there's other videos on the channel to check out that just have straight Dogman. But these are definitely good, so trust me. On to the links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help this channel to continue to grow and go. All of those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting. Stories that, they just don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. Now, everyone, please, all at once, let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first encounter. Even though I was born in London, I was raised by Somali parents in a Somali-speaking household. Plus, I spent 2.5 years in East Africa, 2 of which were in Somalia. Because of this, I feel I have a very strong connection with the culture. One thing I want to start off with is that Somali belief in supernatural is very strong. In fact, it's strong across all of Africa. Even so, the Somali people are strongly Muslim, so the main focus of our supernatural belief are in jinns. You'll hear of legends or folk tales about different things, but jinns are often seen to be the main culprit. My experience was back in August 2017, when I had spent just over a year in Somalia. At this point, I was in Jarui, which is where my dad was born, and we have some relatives. I had spent a month there already with my aunt and cousins along with some friends. Something I should clarify is in Somali culture, camels are very important. They are used as a measure of wealth and success. So people make sure to care for them. Over his life, my granduncle had built up his wealth and had a few hundred camels. As he couldn't take care of them all, he hired some Jalgir to do so. Jalgir are an important part of Somali culture, since they take care of the camel herd. They are almost always men, preferably young and unmarried. My family wanted me to spend time with one who was called Handed. I had met him, so I was fine with it. Jalgir can return home with the herd, or they can spend the night outside with the herd. The plan was for me to spend a few days with him for the culture. He and I talked for the whole day about things, such as his experience in Somalia and mine as a diaspora. He was making good progress in learning English as he wanted to be an engineer himself, which is a path he is currently progressing along with very well. Once sunset came, we prayed and then made preparations to sleep outdoors. We talked some more about things like football. He was a Liverpool fan. Until about 1 in the morning. One thing I remember was that I could see so many stars with zero obstruction or light pollution, which is very hard to find in the UK. This is when we heard some whooping laughs that sounded exactly like a hyena. I got a bit spooked, but it was nothing to scare as I had dealt with hyenas before. Hannet got his gun out and handed me one, so we could keep the camels safe. Hyenas are cowards, so it's easy to scare them off with noise. 20 minutes later, we heard the same laugh again, except it was close and slightly strained. Hen had let off a few shots in the direction it came from, and the sound stopped for another 5 minutes. When it came back again, we were very worried, as normal hyenas were smart enough to run away from the sounds of gunshot. Because of its weird voice, we thought it was ill, which meant trouble, so we were ready to shoot it properly. This is when we started praying and making dua, because some jinns are driven away by them. We were surrounded by a bunch of bushes 20 meters in front of us, which were in a roughly semicircle shape. The laughing sound was even more hoarse and human-like, and even a few seconds it came from a different point in that semicircle. The scariest thing was what had previously sounded like footsteps of a four-legged hyena sounded like the footsteps of a man running. I was seriously scared at this point and wanted to fire everywhere into the bushes, but Hanad told me not to. He told me to get a clear shot so that I wouldn't waste ammo or hurt anything unfortunate enough to be in the bullet's path. The camels started to bellow and bray even louder, which was when the jinn decided to stick its head out of the bushes. I know it wasn't a hyena because it was a good 2.5 to 3 meters off the ground. I started praying even louder, and Hanad shot a couple times, which made it disappear into the bush. We heard one last laughing sound from it, and the sound of it running away. Although I was relieved, neither of us dared to sleep, as the camels were still restless. We spent the whole night praying to keep it away, even though the camels had stopped making noises a couple hours before sunlight. As soon as it became dawn, we headed back and told my family about it, who immediately directed us to a sheikh who did Quran surahs on us to keep away the evil. Even though Hanad offered to take me out again, I refused, which he understood. I spent another week in the city, but I didn't really talk about it with my family members because things like this are not talked about. The rest of my time in Somalia was relatively uneventful, but I'll never forget what happened, and I thank God for keeping me and Hanad safe. Today's second encounter. Let me get straight to what's going on. Last night I was dog-sitting my roommate's friend's dog. He's a small poodle and typically doesn't bark. Strangely, however, he started barking towards my front door. I assumed it was somebody coming in from the outside because I live in a big apartment building, but people are always coming in and out. Anyway, after a few hours, I decide to eat a late-night snack in the kitchen. It's probably around 2:30-ish. All of a sudden, I heard like a deep, low growl sound. It sounded inhuman-like. I tried to think of possible scenarios, but nothing made sense. It wasn't the dog because he left around 10. My roommates were sleeping in their rooms, and there wasn't any TVs or phones on. It made the sound twice. The best way I can describe it, have you ever seen a monster about to pounce on somebody and they make that intimidating growl before? Literally that. At first I wasn't scared because I was like, this can't be real. It happened again in a lower tone, but it was too creepy. Plus it came from the same direction where the dog was barking. My living room and kitchen is connected into one big living space, but my living room couch is facing the kitchen, and it was literally nothing there. My front door where the dog was barking is in the kitchen. Weird, I know, but I'm trying to help you see my perspective of looking at it, LOL. I haven't told my roommates because I don't want to freak them out. Plus, one is very religious and he will call a priest immediately. Today's third encounter, Murray, Oklahoma. I'd gone out looking for my family's home site from the 1890s. I had only a general idea of the location near spring. I'd chosen the winter in the hopes of the bushes and trees would have lost the leaves and I would be able to see the ruins better. I was looking at some old metal cans and was down on one knee. I heard a twig snap and looked up. I saw nothing and continued my study of the junk I had found. After about 5 minutes, I got the feeling that someone was looking at me. I look up very slowly, and about 30 yards away, standing behind a clump of bushes, was a very large animal. I stood up and just stared at it. I guess I was in shock. It was about 7.5 to 8 feet tall, very stocky, and was reddish-gray color. Its face was darker. It simply turned around and walked up over the small rise towards the Rock Creek. I stood there for about another minute or two and walked back to my truck. It made no noise, and I smelled nothing. It was a very still day, and I was in a low place between some higher elevated hills. It was about 7.5 to 8 feet tall, very stocky, reddish-gray color. Its face dark. Its face was flat-looking, and its head had that almost gorilla-look cone shape to it. Today's fourth encounter. Pontotoc, Oklahoma. I was 8 years old, and we had just moved to the country. I had lots of woods all around the house. We had a little camper I used to play in. I had several Chihuahua and a Rottweiler. Well, one day I was playing in the camper, and the dogs were barking, running just a little ways from where I was. I decided to follow them. What came after was cute. It was a little fawn. I was going to chase it, but I saw this huge, smelly, 8-foot-tall, red mud clay-colored thing. As little as I was, I thought it was a tall man until I hollered, "Hey, who are you?" He looked at me, and his face was so ugly and scary, I knew then he was not a man. He stepped right over a 5.5-foot fence. The little fawn ran right under it. He didn't catch the fawn. I was in shock and couldn't speak, so my dad told me to draw what I saw. He said it looked similar to a sasquatch. That deer season, my dad was deer hunting. He had a deer right next to him. He was about to shoot him, and he heard something coming toward him. The buck ran off. Dad stood up and yelled, "You scared my deer off. You're on my land." He heard a high-pitched sound like a lion and a bull mixed together and heard branches break over his head. He ran to the house and got both my brothers. They each got a gun. My mom called the sheriff, and he thought it was a prank, but they sent a deputy anyway. When he heard those sounds, he said, "Call me if you kill it," and left. Now it's dark and the sun had set, so they gave up. The rest of that night it paced back and forth, making that high-pitched sound. Today's fifth encounter, Caddo, Oklahoma. Alright guys, I got a weird one for you. So we were driving north, about a mile or two from my mom's house in the back roads of Stecker. Driving about 40 miles an hour. We were taking my sister back home, who lives about 8 miles away. When all of a sudden we saw what looked like this grayish-looking football player streak across the road. It was running really fast. I know it wasn't a deer because whatever it was on 2 legs, grayish, and built just like a football player. Meaning it was thick on the top, like it had shoulder pads on. I had never seen anything like this. I can't exactly say what I saw, but all I know is I saw something weird. If it was a Dogman or a Bigfoot, in my opinion, from this happening of why they are so hard for people to prove is because they are so incredibly fast. Maybe that's why they are so hard to prove or to get a hold of. All I know is they are extremely fast. We didn't stop or anything. We were too scared, so we just kept driving. We were in a little bitty car, a 79 Datsun, so I know it couldn't outrun something like that or run it over. Alright guys, just a short one for you today. I hope you really enjoyed tonight's encounters. I got a pretty good lineup tomorrow. I'm going to interview the Japanese woman who shared her partner's encounter with us, and she also shared a little bit of the legend, a Japanese legend with us. So I'm going to interview her. I'm also going to interview her partner. Hopefully everything goes smoothly tomorrow so I can get both of them done. I've got a really cool idea going on with Victor for Thursday. And Friday, I'm probably going to be interviewing Luke. So I'm looking forward to those 3 days. It's definitely going to be a little hectic, but I'll figure it out. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed tonight's upload, and I want to thank you, everybody, for always tuning in. Have a great night, guys. Farewell.